Modern Jamaican history does not begin with Bob Marley and reggae music. It begins with a group of black workers in a cane field fighting for justice. In one way or another, Jamaicans have been fighting ever since. First, they fought colonial masters.
You got a sense of an awakening, the growth of a sense of rejection and rebellion. Babylon must fall.
And won their independence.
We are our own people. We have our own direction. Our movement forward now.
Then they dared to take on the might of America.
Kissinger doesn't stick his finger in Manley's face, he box his finger out of your face.
As long as this party is in power, we intend to walk through the world on our feet and not on our knees.
It's a journey to nationhood.
Jamaicans are people who want their freedom, and they want to retain their freedom, and they will die fighting for their freedom.
Jamaica lies almost at the center of the Caribbean Sea. It was home to Arawak Indians until Christopher Columbus stumbled across it in 1494, declaring it the fairest island eyes have beheld, mountains and the land seem to touch the sky.
Physically, it's by far the most beautiful island in the Caribbean. We have mountains 7,300 feet higher than any mountain in the United Kingdom. We're laced with wonderful rivers. There are so many different parts of Jamaica. There are parts of Jamaica that are African. Most of it is very English. The parish of St. Anne's, you think you were driving through Sussex.
The Indians were almost extinct by the time slavery took hold. Spanish colonizers began to import labor from Africa. Jamaica was the dropping-off point and auctioning center for slaves. Those sold to sugar plantations here faced a harsh, cruel life and an early death. Only the most resilient would survive, and the more rebellious took to the island's mountains and fought a war of sabotage and uprisings. First against the Spanish, then against the British when they took charge in 1655. Rebellion has shaped Jamaica's history. In 1865, Paul Bogle, a preacher, led a peaceful protest at Morant Bay. When the crowd were fired upon, they fought back. Bogle declared that the Black-Skin War was at hand. It was a war against white oppression, and one that this brave peasant army could never hope to win. Naturally, when the rebellion was quelled, white revenge was swift and sadistic. Paul Bogle was hanged. 430 of his followers were executed. The British government, appalled at the ferocity of the violence, decided that the island should be ruled directly from Britain.
The closest modern comparison to this would have been apartheid, in which you have a democracy for whites and a dictatorship for blacks. And what it meant is that the many rebellions which took place against slavery were brutally put down. But this did not stop the fact that Jamaica remained, for historical reasons, one of the most rebellious of the British possessions.
By the 1920s, slave ships had been replaced by steamships. Wealthy Europeans and Americans came in search of paradise and friendly natives. Despite the end of slavery, most blacks continued to work in cane fields from dusk until dawn and were paid a pittance. In 1938, with the world on the brink of war, the west of the island became a battlefield. Canefield workers in Frome decided to down tools over poor working conditions and wages. They started a rebellion amongst the masses, weary of still being treated like slaves. They burned crops, destroyed houses and fields, then turned on the landowners. In the heat of the conflict, many were shot by the police, while others were thrown into jail.
Those disorders was a turning point in Jamaica's modern history. A new agenda was set for the future, in which the people and their views and their aspirations would be taken into consideration.
Devon House, built in 1881, is a testament to Georgian England, bang in the middle of bustling modern Kingston. In Jamaica's political awakening, two leaders emerged from the island's brown classes. They were cousins and as diametrically opposed as two men could be. There was Norman Manley, the introverted Rhodes Scholar, a bookish barrister with a passion for classical music. Opposing him was the extrovert Bustamante, a one-time moneylender with a flamboyance, charm and wit that made him a natural man of the people. These two men would come to dominate the country's political future. But what they both wanted more than anything was to lead an independent Jamaica. In colonial Jamaica, shade or pigment mattered. Both men came from the mixed-race upper classes. They had little in common with the underclass they sought to represent. But in the Caribbean, the black masses had been taught to believe that only light-skinned leaders could be taken seriously. The cricket test proved it. In 1938, the West Indies cricket team was predominantly white and mixed race.
You've had a situation in Jamaica for generations where there was a color class hierarchy, no question at all. At the top, white people, white expatriates, white locals, and then mixed peoples who were closer in the spectrum of color to being white, going down the scale to people who are black.
On behalf of Her Majesty, His Excellency invested those who, by their service to the island, have nobly deserved the recognition and thanks of their Queen.
There's what I call the gratefulness factor, in that most people who were of Bustamante's complexion, it had nothing to do with the majority of black people. So for somebody like him to actually stand for them made him far more important to them, because they were grateful to him for having broken, to some degree, with his typical social background.
Frome was the beginning of one of many worker rebellions sweeping the whole of the Caribbean region. As a lawyer, Norman Manley realized he had a vital role to play.
I well remember the day they started. Within 2 hours, every single group of workers in the principal city, Kingston, were out on strike. And I wondered what was going to happen. And that night I made up my mind. And I put an advertisement in the leading newspaper of Jamaica that I would represent all the striking groups in the country. And I got up next morning and life began on a new plane.
Norman Manley, NW to his friends, was an idealist. He had a real love for the land of Jamaica and its people. But unlike his cousin known as Buster, he would always find it difficult to connect with them.
Buster had a very easy rapport with people. I mean, he could just get up there and say a couple of things they loved to hear. They liked the little bit of the devil in him, whereas NW was much harder to swallow, for the Jamaican people to swallow. I always had the feeling that in a way he kind of set the bar so high, sometimes he exhausted them.
Alexander Bustamante really didn't come into prominence until there was a historic march by workers. That march happened to be in an area in which he was, and he jumped into the march and moved to the head of it and gave the march leadership. The police commanded the marchers to cease, to stop, and they leveled their guns at the marchers. And Bustamante bared his shirt and bared his chest and said to them, "Shoot me and leave the people alone."
A report by the British government following the uprising at Frome was damning. It blamed a colour caste system for black unemployment and urban squalor. Norman vowed to sweep this inequality aside when he set up the People's National Party in 1938. Buster's vision was different. He formed a trade union in his own name, out of which grew the Jamaica Labour Party.
I think he saw that Manley was a potential rival for his leadership, somebody coming from a different sector of the society. The intellectual, the successful barrister, the person who was seen as the purveyor of ideas.
Over the next 20 years, Norman Washington Manley became the man with the plan. He'd already won the right to vote for the island's masses, and he had taken Jamaica into the West Indies Federation with the aim of forming one government for all the islands and cutting ties with Britain altogether.
If the islands got together to form a larger unit, we might get self-government better if we federated. And then there was also the aspect that if we could federate and work out an economic plan for the region, then industries could come into existence which catered not just to an insular, small insular market, but to a wider market.
Buster went along with federation at first, but no one could read the mood of the people like he could. He decided to hedge his bets.
I never know what I'm going to do from one moment to the other.
Buster knew Jamaican people had a big island mentality and wouldn't be told what to do by smaller Caribbean islands.
One of the reasons why I'm chief against federation too is this customs union, which, if it materializes, will destroy the economy of Jamaica.
We felt we could do it, we could go it alone, so that eventually it arose that a referendum was held, called by Norman Manley, to take a decision, and it was the JLP that fought for Jamaica to go it alone as an independent country, while the PNP fought to retain our position in the federation.
When the question of continuing the federation was put to the people in 1961, they voted no. It was a crushing disappointment to Manley, who felt a historic opportunity had been lost.
St. Mary East, 74 of 90 boxes counted.
As the election results came in those days, they would come in on the rediffusion radio. And my grandfather was sitting at the head of the dining room table, and in front of him, the federal flag was folded on the table. And I went over and I said, "What's happening, Pa?" Because I sensed that everybody was getting very upset in the house. And he drew me over to him, and he took the flag and unfurled it, and he put it around me. And he pulled me to him, hugging me with the flag. And he said, "Never forget this flag." And he just held me. And he was so sad. I just felt the enormity of that moment.
Come to Jamaica and feel all right. Today, thousands of people from all over the world come to do just that. Whatever else was happening, tourism in Jamaica was thriving. In the 1950s, the island gained a reputation as the place where the rich, famous and the powerful played. As more and more hotels appeared, a new service industry developed.